Hello and welcome back, everybody, to the Just One More Level podcast. I am your co-host, Christian.
And I'm your co-host, John.
And this week we have played a little bit of a little game that you may have never heard of. It's a little tiny indie hit, Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah, real tiny.
Real tiny, yeah. Nobody's
Real
ever heard of
tiny.
it. It was this thing
No.
made by this tiny little company, I think called Naughty Dog or something like that,
Uh-huh.
right? And
Right.
and they released it on the PlayStation 2 originally, and it's had a couple remakes and things, but obviously I am being facetious.
Yeah.
Ratchet and Clank was a huge series back in the day, and is still going to this day. Although it's not as big now as it used to be, it is
Mm.
still fairly large. And
Yep.
it's getting a new game on the PS4, which I am actually super excited for. I'm not, or did I say
Yep.
PS4? On the PS5. I am
Yep.
super excited for it, not gonna lie. And also, I said Naughty Dog, I meant Insomniac. I get those two companies confused because they work so closely together.
Yeah.
Insomniac games, my bad. Anyways, yeah, no, we
Mhm.
played some Ratchet and Clank.
We did.
So my history with Ratchet and Clank is it was one of the first games I played back on the PS2. I kind of grew
Okay.
up with Ratchet and Clank. But how about you? What was this your first time? Did you grow up with
Um,
it?
my first time playing any game in the series at all was the PS4 reboot that came out a few years ago alongside a feature film.
Oh,
It,
yes, yeah. Okay. Very similar to the first game, if I'm not
uh-huh.
mistaken. I own it, but haven't gotten around to playing it. But they did change some stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's a direct remake.
No, no.
It's just a reboot, and it's supposed to go along with the movie in some
Right.
capacity. I didn't see the movie. My friend just happened to own it, so I got to play a little bit of it. But this is my first time playing the original game or any of the games on the PlayStation 2.
Okay,
And
okay.
I very much enjoyed it. It was great. I'm gonna compare it to a game. Reminded me a lot of Castlevania. No.
we
It
got to get that in there every week.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of Jack and Dax.
Oh, sure, yeah, okay, okay.
Just because of the there's like a buddy mechanic. You have a little companion that sticks around you and doesn't really do much, and just kind of
Right,
provides
right.
comic relief. And sometimes they'll put in tutorial tips spoken by that character. So every once in a while Daxter would chime something in your ear about don't jump over there, or hey, maybe we should go look over in that direction. And Clank does similar things from time to
Right, and
time.
that's actually what I was saying earlier. Like, they worked in the same office across the hall from each other, and they
Wow.
both just so happened to be making buddy platformers at the same time on the same console. And that's
Nice.
why the two series are so similar, and that's why I
Hmm.
constantly mix them up with each other.
Okay.
Because Ratchet and Clank was made by Insomniac, whereas the Jack and Daxter being made by Naughty Dog.
Right.
And so they actually like exchanged tricks and tips and things, how they were getting the most power out of the console, and kind of what they were doing with each other. And in later series, if I'm not mistaken, or later games, there are little Easter eggs for each other's games and things like that in there too. So
Okay.
just kind of neat, kind of neat. Yeah, how you were comparing it
Yeah.
to Jack and Daxter. Yep, there's a
Yeah.
good reason for that.
Yeah. So Ratchet and Clank, for anybody that doesn't know, is I guess best described as an action platformer kind of
Yeah, definitely.
collectathon with a little sprinkling of a third person shooter and just the tiniest
Yeah,
whisper of RPG elements, the tiniest
yeah. I
whisper.
would say
Only in the
it's.
sense I'm sorry,
Go ahead, you can finish. Yeah.
only in the sense that you the things that you're collecting are not just random, they're currency, and you use that currency to purchase weapons and ammo. And like
Right.
you can almost all of your what do I want to say? Almost all of your weapons and gear is purchased by you. You have to choose which ones you want to buy, and like the ammo and different things like that, and they help you overcome obstacles in the
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of what I was saying about it not so much being a true collectathon in a sense, whereas
Mhm.
because most of the things you're collecting is actually just the currency, which are like nuts and bolts that you use to purchase more upgrades and things like that. And kind of the same with the RPG elements. It's not like you level up directly by killing things. You get currency by killing things that you can then spend on upgrading your equipment. So
Yeah.
the currency in this game kind of works like an experience system and as legitimate currency all kind of at the same time.
Right.
But what I absolutely love about this game is, yes, the gameplay, but also
Right.
just the level and world design.
Yeah.
Growing up especially, I thought it was amazing. It was like
Yeah.
nothing else I had ever really played at the time.
Hmm.
Sly Cooper was, I believe, my actual first PS2 game, and in some sense, I kind of can see some similarities between the platforming and Sly Cooper and Ratchet and Clank, but they added
Right.
all of these action elements that was just so much better than anything that I had ever done on like the N64 or anything like that. And it had the
Yeah.
double jump mechanic in there, so if you kind of screwed up your jump a little bit or whatever, you didn't just have the ability to change your velocity midair, but you could also do a second jump to kind of correct yourself. And then they have a
Hmm.
little bit later in the game a hover pack that you can get and whatnot to help you hover, which
Yep.
makes again it gives you more control in the air. You can do like long jumps and things, which I mean, obviously some of those things were in Mario 64. But
Yeah.
yeah, and then like John said, the variety is just crazy.
Yep.
You mentioned how like there's some first person shooter, well, more like third person shooter elements and things like
Yeah.
that. There
Yep.
are so many gadgets and weapons that you get, and they all serve different purposes for the most part. You
Hmm.
have your starting weapon, of course, is just a wrench, and that's what
Right.
you have, and it's basically like a sword. You just
Hmm.
kind of throw it, or sorry, getting ahead of myself. You just kind of beat stuff with it. You smack monsters across the head, break open
Hmm.
boxes with it. But you can also throw it. You can crouch down and you can throw it kind of a not
Yep.
boomerang style because it doesn't make like a big loop, but it just goes like straight forward and then back to you, which gives
Yeah.
it some more versatility. And then on top of that, they made even more use with it by adding the puzzle elements of the puzzle platformer, action platformer. There
Hmm.
are like little bolts or yeah, some bolts sometimes that you can use your wrench, you can put it on the bolt and then you can spin it around to like open up new pathways or change the height of platforms and all different kinds of things. And it's just
Right.
the versatility with the different gadgets that you get, as well as just the number
Yeah.
of items that you get, is just insane to me,
Hmm.
and I love it. I love it.
Yeah. And I think it has a very satisfying progression too, because I played Ratchet and Clank for about 2 hours, I believe.
Okay.
I got to visit three different planets.
Mm-hmm.
I got to fill up your weapon wheel, like your wheel for weapon
Yeah.
and gear. You
So it's
have
like
like
a quick select menu for anybody who hasn't played the game before. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's like a quick select menu. Use the D-pad to switch out different things that you can use.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to fill up most of it. Probably had about 5 or 6 gadgets
Yeah,
that I
pretty
was
much
able
every
to
world.
buy.
So each world only lasts, I don't know for you, but for me, a roughly half hour to an hour, depending on how
Hmm.
much you try to like complete it to find everything
Yeah.
in it. And
Uh-huh.
each world tends to have at least one or two new gadgets, at least,
Yeah.
that you unlock.
Hmm.
So yeah, the progression, I agree.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed, unlike the couple of games that we played previously, the voice acting and cutscenes are incredible. They have a
Right,
lot of they have a
right.
lot of fun. They have a lot of the characters all have a lot of personality. And Ratchet and Clank, continuing the PlayStation's tradition for being edgy, are very snarky and sarcastic. So they have a lot of fun, a lot of fun with that dynamic.
Right.
So it's just it's just very satisfying. The gameplay is very satisfying when you're going around and you're shooting things and you're solving puzzles and you're collecting things and you're taking enemies. I don't believe I think I died a couple of times, and
Hmm.
but not a whole lot. It wasn't like my experience playing God of War, for instance, where I
Right.
was
Yeah. No,
I
combat
was
wise,
dying
personally, I
constantly.
believe the game's fairly easy.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
I believe so I've played a little bit more than you. I don't know exactly how much. I want to say roughly 3.5 hours that I've played total. And
Okay.
there's one point where you can get to a ship, and it's like a side thing that you don't have to do.
Okay.
But you can like unlock some extra stuff by doing it basically. And anyways, there's this one specific enemy type. I don't remember the name of them, but I had a hard time dealing with those. That's the only time I died to enemies that I remember. But the world, like trying to get between
Yeah.
platforms and things like that, just because I wasn't being very careful, right? I was just kind of rushing through it, trying to get from point A to point B, and so I may have mistimed a jump or two, and fell in a
Right.
pit. So, I mean, this game does have
Yeah.
the pits, the instant death pits. That's a thing that you have
Yeah.
to deal with. But
Yeah.
overall, though, I would say it's pretty decent in that regard.
Hmm.
At least in the early game, more than pits, it's more inconveniences that you have to deal with. So
Yeah.
like you'll fall to a lower area, or you'll like have quicksand that you have to quickly get out of, or you're forced out of.
Right.
Um, or there's water that like a stream that'll take you down to the bottom of where you just climbed up from. Things like
Mhm.
that, less than instant death at least. But later in the game, yeah, it's an old action platformer. I mean, there's
Sure.
gonna be pits that kill you, and
Yeah.
is what it is, I
Yeah.
guess.
But what I did like about the game is I found that they're fairly forgiving when it comes to the continue system.
Oh
Because
yeah, I
you
agree.
pop right back up wherever you died.
Yeah,
Or at least at the beginning of towards the beginning of the stage. So there's not a
yeah,
whole lot of excuse me, there's not a whole lot of moaning and groaning because you have to retread a whole bunch of ground that you already did.
right,
And that can be the most frustrating part of, say, even like Crash Bandicoot on the original
right.
PlayStation, having
Yeah,
to retread a part that you are so good at now because you've gotten through it 50 times
right,
to get back to the part that you're actually trying to overcome.
right.
I didn't find a lot of frustrating moments like that with this game. It was pretty forgiving. There's not really like a game over type thing. Yeah, every time you die, you just kind of pop back where you were.
Yeah, I'm
So
not 100% positive. I think you might lose some of your nuts and bolts, maybe, but I could be
okay,
wrong on that even.
yeah.
But no,
I know.
I agree completely.
I think you
Good.
retain them. I only know that because I got an exorbitant amount on
Hmm.
the first world that I visited. Well, I guess it would be the second, because you start out in sort of your home world and Clank shows up,
Right.
and
Yeah.
then you progress to the first world you go to is in Ratchet's ship that he's trying to fix, and Clank helps him fix it. And then
Right.
after that, they give you a ship that's actually functional, and you can explore the map further. So you're transported directly to your first destination, and then you're able to choose where you go. So the
After
first,
that, there's a little bit of branching path. Yeah.
yeah, so the
It's not
first
like an
planet,
open world game or anything like that where you can just
no,
choose to go anywhere at any time, but they do give you some small choices of would you like to go here or here first? That
right,
kind of thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm actually very glad I chose the path I did, because it turns out that the first planet I chose to go to was the one that gave me the better chance of finding the superhero character that they're looking for to
Mm,
save the world.
yeah. Yeah.
That's
Part
the
of the
first
story.
planet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the first planet I went to, and I visited the robot guy's shop, and I died a good bit on that world. But that world is where you get the grappling hook.
Hmm.
And if I had chosen to go to the other world is almost completely grappling hook based. Like
Right.
the entire platforming map that you have to overcome to get through that world is all with the grappling hook. And I was like,
and
well, if I had gone here first, I would have been up a creek, and I would have had to turn around and go back the other way
right.
anyway.
And that's what I was gonna say. Luckily, though, it's very easy to travel from world to world. It doesn't like cost anything or anything like that. There's just a
Right.
short loading screen in between them. And one other thing I really like is the screen where you can choose which planet to go to will tell
Mhm.
you like what objectives there are left in that world to do. So
Mhm.
if you're trying to do the completionist run, or if you were missing an item before you went to a planet and weren't able to do all the objectives your first visit or whatever, it's
Right.
really easy to tell like right from the galaxy map or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
where to go, like what there is still to do. You don't have to load into a planet, run around, figure out, oh, okay, I already got everything done here, let me write that down so I don't forget or something, and then
Right.
go back to the galaxy map. You don't have to kind of repeat that whole process 100 times, which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that is definitely a thing where I mean, it's less of an issue, I feel like, a little bit later in the game because you
Right.
you get the grappling hook really early, and then the only other large item I remember for like traversal is the backpack with the propeller backpack or whatever, like whatever
Right.
it's called.
Which you get on the
And
world I
the
went to.
Right, yeah, also
Mhm.
very early, and then just one or two world later, you get a device that lets you hack terminals essentially. I
Right.
forget what they call that as well.
Yeah.
But so all of
I
that's
forget.
fairly early into the game,
Mhm.
thankfully. So like after that, as far as I can remember, it's been years since I've beaten the game, but as far as I can remember, there's nothing else really that locks you out of anything. So
Gotcha.
you're good to complete all of the what do you want to call them, the missions, not missions so much, the objectives
Right.
at that point, which is nice. What else? I had a thought but I lost it, and
You
that's
had a
just
thought,
like one
but
of
you
the most
lost it.
irritating things.
No.
Yeah. There
Well,
was something that I was really wanting to say. Go ahead.
well, I can say that I really appreciate the direction for the game.
Mm,
And I'll explain a little bit. I really appreciate that when you're running around the world, it is a bit open world. It's not, it doesn't lock you into a path to force
Right.
you to make a linear progression from point A to point B. You can explore a little bit, but
Right.
there's
I
usually
want to
like,
interject just a tiny bit. I
okay,
agree that it's not linear per
hmm
se, but
yeah,
less than open. It's more it gives you the choice of linear paths,
yes,
right? So,
that's where I'm going with it. Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
okay, perfect. Okay,
yes,
okay.
yes. They lay out literally a path of nuts and bolts for you to follow,
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah,
to
quite literally
to
at some
take
points,
you
yeah.
where you're supposed to go, and it's usually very apparent where
Hmm.
they want you to go next, and you go through your platforming stages and you defeat your enemies and you find the people you're supposed to be talking to and different things like that. It's not just completely wide open, ambiguous. So,
Sure. Yeah.
but at the same time, it doesn't make you feel locked in. It doesn't make you
Yeah.
feel
It gives
like
you some
Crash,
choice, yeah.
right? Like Crash Bandicoot. There's
Hmm.
only one way to go.
Right,
It
yeah.
doesn't, yeah, it doesn't make you feel locked in like that. You know what I mean? Even though it is essentially a linear game, you're trying to go from point A to point B to accomplish a singular objective for the most part, other than the little side missions you can do on the map.
And honestly, it's something that I was just talking about recently with another friend of ours, Austin.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly, the older I've gotten and the more I've played open world games, I'm getting more and more tired of them, to be honest. So I kind of found this refreshing going back to this. Don't get me wrong, I still love open world experiences at least to some degree.
Right.
But then I think back, like, so Kingdom Hearts is one of my favorite game series of all time. Kingdom Hearts 1 and
Mm-hmm.
2 used a level based system. You would go to a world, and then you
Mm-hmm.
would have distinct areas in that world. So there
Right.
would be a loading screen, small area to explore, loading screen, small area to explore, etc. And then
Right.
there's Kingdom Hearts 3, which still is world based, but each world has very, very large areas. There's only like one or two loading screen per world, and they're massive, these
Right.
areas. And the extra mobility that they give you, in my opinion, actually caused the level design to get worse because they made the level design larger and taller, and it makes it harder to find things. It makes it harder to not only get around, but whenever you are playing any sort of game where there are things to collect and things
Mm-hmm.
like that, it just gets annoying. In my
Right.
opinion, like I have a limited amount of time to do these things, and I've
Right.
100% Kingdom Hearts 1, except for the gummy ship missions, and pretty much
Mm-hmm.
100% completed Kingdom Hearts 2, and I never found it to be much of a chore outside of
Right.
skill based things like secret bosses and things like that. Kingdom Hearts
Right.
3 is just such a pain. And then I think of
Yeah.
like Assassin's Creed, where there's
Yeah.
like 200 feathers to collect in this giant open world city.
Right.
Where do you even start?
I,
Like, there's so many feathers. How do you explore this whole place without a map of some sort,
yeah.
like an online guide type map or whatever?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
take forever. And
I
so I
got
actually kind of appreciate the more
yeah.
linear elements.
Assassin's Creed is the only open world game that I don't know what it is about it. I've heard a lot of critique about the first game, especially for being kind of like rough around the edges and they didn't take long to
Hmm.
polish things. Assassin's Creed, the two Brotherhood and Revelations are far more polished versions of the first game, and then Assassin's Creed 3 was the magnum opus according to most fans, and then it just kind of tapered off after that. People just stopped caring. But I like the first game. I don't know what it is.
So did I,
I
honestly.
just have so much fun running around being an assassin. I just
Right.
love it.
And that's, well, and I think a large part of it for me is when Assassin's Creed first came out, it was kind of a whole
Mhm.
new thing,
Yeah.
unlike anything else that had ever come out.
Yeah.
But I actually kind of disagree. I feel like, so 2 was a trilogy. They made a few of them with that same character before they made 3. I think
Mm-hmm.
by the time they made 3, it was kind of it kind of ran its course. I think that was the start
Right.
of the downfall, to be honest, with number
Okay.
3.
Okay.
But regardless, don't get me wrong. I still, like you said, I love running around and exploring these open world games, and
Yeah.
being an assassin was really
Mm-hmm.
fun, and the ability to climb and all that. And then you have like Breath of the Wild, which is an open world game, and I absolutely love it.
Mm-hmm.
So don't get me wrong. It's not that open world is bad. I just,
Right.
generally speaking, find distinct areas and linear paths
Mm.
to be just better level design in general. Generally
Yeah.
speaking.
It goes back to that same thing we talked about with the fixed cameras in Resident Evil, Silent Hill, and
to a
in,
degree,
in
yeah,
God of
yeah.
War. It's
You can spend
it,
so much more time. Yeah.
right. It can be very cinematic, and they are tailoring the game to show you what they want to show you. I mean, if you think about
Right.
movie, and I'm going back to my film school background here.
Right.
Filmmaking is a language, and I have read one of the books in the course study was an entire book on understanding the language of film and why directors do certain things the way they do them. And it can be as intricate as the camera moved from left to right as opposed to right to left, and that means this shot is supposed to show progression versus the camera moving right to left showing regression, just because when we read from left to right. So if the camera is panning or following something moving from right to left, it can make you subconsciously feel like the character is regressing versus progressing. And there's a really famous example in this very old movie that I'm sure you're not going to be interested in, called The Graduate, with Dustin Hoffman.
Very, very likely I will not care one bit. Yes, but
it's
feel
an old
free.
it's an old movie, and it's very famous, especially in like the film school. I don't know what you would call that, the community.
Yeah, click something like that.
Pretentious film nerds,
People,
cinephiles.
yes.
There you go. So it's a very basic movie. It's just a romantic comedy. And it's this kid just graduated graduate school, and he's just trying to figure his life out. And while he's trying to figure his life out, this MILF named Mrs. Robinson tries to seduce him. And
Nice. Okay.
yeah. And the soundtrack was done by Simon and Garfunkel. Their song "Mrs. Robinson" is from that movie. There's this anyway, huge tangent. The opening shot of the movie is what I was trying to reference here. The opening shot of the movie, he's on a moving sidewalk at the airport. He's getting off of the moving sidewalk. He's getting on the moving sidewalk at the airport, and the shot is following him right to left. And that was the example that was directly called out in that book, because the character is regressing in his life. He did something successful by graduating graduate school, and now he's descending into a world of, I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life, and anxiety. So the camera's tracking him right to left. But
gotcha.
Tying this all back into video games,
right?
For goodness sakes, in fixed camera games, and especially in God of War, I felt like the camera angles and the path and the progression was very tailored to what the director of the game wanted me to see.
Right. It was almost part of the storytelling, is what you're trying to say.
Yes, it was part of the storytelling. So it felt really good. And in Silent Hill, they do a fantastic job of spinning
I think that's
the camera all around in different ways and things. So in scaling that to Ratchet and Clank,
bringing it all back. Let's go.
Bringing it all back. The feeling of having an open world and being able to explore if I want to, but there's a track to go on. I know what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to go find this guy, or I'm supposed to overcome this obstacle, or I'm supposed to do this thing. Knowing what I'm supposed to do and narrowing it down makes the gameplay feel a little bit more satisfying than just having this big, expansive world like that can feel almost overwhelming at times.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was going to say, was it also makes it a bit more accessible, too.
Yeah.
Having the not only the more linear paths with the smaller areas and things like that, but also, like you specifically mentioned, how a lot of times they'll have the nuts and bolts laid out in a way that it almost directly tells you, hey, follow this path, like come this way, jump up here, etc., which I think is great for younger gamers, people who just don't traditionally play a whole lot of video games, people new to video games, older players, whatever. I think that's great for them, and I think this is an amazing video game for kids, because it's something they can jump right into and have fun with, and the worlds are colorful and bright and fun to explore with wacky creatures and things like that. But also for adults and more experienced gamers, there's secrets to find and extra areas to unlock and objectives to complete if you want to spend the time with it. And you can max out all your weapons and things like that. So I think it's great for people of all ages. I think they really struck a magnificent balance. It is a game on the easier side. So don't go into it expecting a huge challenge. But I think there's a good... Yeah, it's a fun game. It's a very fun game with some challenging moments.
It's the same reason... It's the same reason why I always defend and am in love with Minecraft, because the combat, in no means, even when you're fighting the the biggest of bosses is overwhelmingly difficult. You don't
Right.
need extreme precision skill to overcome anything. You know what I mean? I often had wait until night at Minecraft just to kill all the mobs for fun. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's like, because it's not a big deal. I can just run around and kill them, but it gives you, it's relaxing. You can make the game
Right.
whatever you want to make it, and you can be as creative as possible. And you can do the same thing with Ratchet and Clank. You can just sit down and relax and explore the world and fight some guys, and it's that satisfaction. And it's very good. I would say that I really enjoyed the game, very much so.
Yeah.
I would definitely play one more level,
Okay.
or one more game. I don't think it was my most favorite thing, but I will say that had I discovered this game as a child, like you,
Hmm.
had I had a PlayStation 2, had I grown up with that and played this game, I would have fallen in love with it. It would have been
Oh
one of
yeah.
my favorite games. Because I
Like I
played,
saying, growing up, it really was. Yeah, for me.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I played just a little bit of Jack and Daxter as a kid, and I was in love with it, not even having full access to it. I played maybe a total of 35
Right.
minutes of Jack and Daxter in my entire childhood. And
Now, maybe spoiler for a future episode, because I'd love to cover that series at some point too. I
Mhm.
do actually feel like Jack and Daxter is the better of
I
the
agree.
two. To
Yeah.
be honest, I have more nostalgia for Ratchet and Clank because I played it first and I played more of it as a
Right.
child. I personally owned it, whereas one of my brothers owned Jack and Daxter, so I didn't play
Right.
it as much.
Yeah.
But I do think it's probably the better one, and they took on a much edgier feel as the games went on as well
They
with
did, yeah.
Jack and Daxter than Ratchet and Clank.
Mhm.
But regardless, so yeah, I mean, I do agree. I would definitely play also just one more level or just one more game or whatever. But there are some issues.
Yeah.
Specifically, so we played two different versions, which is surprisingly common for us on this show
Right.
about playing the same game. You played the
Mhm.
PS2 version. I played on
I did.
PS3.
Mhm.
The PS3 version has a few small issues, nothing game breaking or anything.
Oh, okay.
But if you're watching on stream or on the YouTube video, you'll be able to see examples of this. Everybody else, you'll just have to take my word for it.
Yeah.
Excuse me. The text scaling sometimes just doesn't fit inside text boxes. Obviously, the
Oh.
PS3 version is in HD, so they scaled the text and everything to make it look cleaner. And sometimes it just doesn't fit inside the text box. It'll just hang
Really?
over. Little annoying, not the end of the world.
Right.
The other thing, PS3 originally had a lot of issues developers did with loading times and things, getting everything to sync up properly. It was just a fairly common issue. Blu-rays drives, old Blu-ray drives are relatively slow loading off of for the amount of data that can be stored on them. So
Right.
another thing that would happen from time to time was there would be a little loading hitch that would cause the video and audio to be out of sync.
Oh.
Kind of
Okay.
annoying. Not a huge deal, but a little thing to consider. Lastly, the last thing that I personally noticed was that so whenever you go underwater, there is swimming in this game. You can go in water. And whenever you go underwater, you have a limited amount of oxygen, and an oxygen tank will pop up on the side of the screen as kind of a gauge to show you how much longer you have that you can stay underwater.
Okay.
And you can tell what they did in the original game was that whenever you first went in the water, it would spawn in the asset of that oxygen tank, and then it would move it into, like, slide it into view of the screen, and then it would slide it out of view of the screen, but it would still keep it loaded. And the reason I know that's how they did it in the original game
Mhm.
is because you can see all of that take place since it's now in a 16:9 aspect ratio. You can see it suddenly appear, slide
Okay.
into place, and then slide off to the side of the screen, but it doesn't
And
slide far enough because it's 16:9 now instead of
Oh.
4:3. So you can
Okay.
actually see, if you're watching the YouTube video or Twitch stream, you can actually see it on screen right now.
Mhm.
From the time you go into water until you load a new world,
Mhm.
an oxygen tank is permanently stuck just on the side of your screen. It never quite
Oh,
goes
no.
off the side of your screen. So it's just little tiny, like I said, nothing game breaking, nothing that really takes away from the enjoyment that much. But there
Right.
are just little things. And I don't think there's any real benefit other than having the cleaner graphics and being able to more easily hook it up to modern televisions. Other than that,
Sure.
in my personal opinion, there's no real benefit playing the PS3 version, to be
Mhm.
honest.
Yeah.
But that's about all the gripes I honestly have with the game. Everything
Yeah.
else is, like I said, the way you move around is excellent. The world design's excellent. It's bright. There's a lot of fun characters.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
I don't have anything to complain about other
I
than the
think
tiny issues with the PS3 version.
I think the only thing I had to complain about was that thing that I already mentioned. not knowing which world to go to. It's not a huge deal
First.
because not knowing which world to go to first. Yeah. Which isn't a huge deal, and they kind of tell you. They kind of make it known that, hey, we need to find the superhero guy.
Right.
So it's you can definitely figure it out. I'm looking at this
piece it together.
oxygen tank now
Right.
on stream. That's hilarious. But no, you can kind of piece it together. But if I think I would have been pretty frustrated if I had gone to the first world first and I was trying to figure it out, because being this the first time I played the game, I had no idea that I was going to get a jetpack. So
right.
I might have thought, or not propeller pack, but the grappling hook. I had no idea that I was going to get a grappling hook. So I might have shown up to that world thinking that I was just stupid and wasted like 25 minutes trying to figure out why I can't make these jumps and why this isn't working. And then I would eventually just, gotten my ship and went to the other world and said, oh, okay.
Gotcha,
so,
yeah.
And maybe not so much now as an adult versus maybe even more as a kid. Like as a kid,
Right.
I'm sure I would have spent even longer trying to figure out what I'm doing wrong and thinking that I was just bad at the game.
What you're saying, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's not a huge gripe. It's pretty small. It's not a huge deal. Other than that, I very much enjoyed the game. Everything checks in every box. Graphics, sound design, level design, gameplay.
And we are contractually obligated to draw some Castlevania similarities with this game.
Yes.
Jokes aside, though, there are, so kind of in the same vein of what you were saying there are objectives per world, and kind of like in Metroidvanias, as you explore new areas, you unlock new abilities, and those abilities let you do things that you couldn't previously do in areas. So I personally don't see that as a negative, right? So you get to the world and there's areas you can't go to and things, but then once you go to another area and unlock a new ability, now you have something to look forward to when you go back. That's kind of how I look at it. Depending on level design, it can kind of be a waste of time. Like if there was no other objectives to do in the meantime or whatever, but like I can understand where you're coming from, and I don't entirely disagree with you.
Right.
But at the same time, I think that was kind of a goal of theirs as well, right? To have moments where you may be able to re-explore areas and do new things that you couldn't do before as well.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, I could see that. I could definitely see that. And that's totally fine. Because it's very, 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 very fun game.
Right. Yeah.
A ton of fun. I highly recommend it. I highly recommend that you try it out, whatever way that you can, or just buy the new one, because I'm sure it's probably better.
Yeah. Crack in Time will end up probably being magnificent. Obviously, I haven't played it yet, but I imagine it'll be amazing. And then the remake for the PS4, reboot for the PS4, I've heard a lot of good things about that version.
It's really good.
So that's a modern console that you can play the series on right there. Or if you have a PS3 kicking around, like I said, the PS3 version's pretty decent as well. So lots of options there and ways to play it. Yeah, I think I picked up the copy that I let you borrow for it. I think I picked that up for, it was somewhere between $5 and $10 roughly, I think. No more than 15. It was $15 maximum that I paid at a local game store for it. So it's not very expensive for PS2, and I doubt the PS3 copy, which comes with 3 different games in it, I doubt it's more than like $20. So
right, and that's all the PS2 originals, right?
Yeah, they're it's Ratchet Clank 1, 2, and I want to say, hold on, I actually have the case sitting right here for it, so
yeah, they're not
I think
numbered.
It's 1, 2, and Going Commando or something like that.
Yeah, they all have cheeky titles, don't they? Ratchet Clank, Going Commando, and then I was looking up like the series. One of them's called Full Frontal something.
Right. Yeah, so it's actually Up Your Arsenal.
Arsenal.
Going Commando and the original are the 3 games in it for the PS3. And that's just the Ratchet Clank collection. Yeah, I paid $18 for it like 5 years ago or something like that. So you can probably find it even cheaper now. So
Yep.
But yeah, I think that's pretty much all we got. Right? It's an excellent game. Everybody should check it out. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. So there's just a little bit of news that we wanted to cover at the end here. First off, as always, next week we will be playing another game, Yooka-Laylee, actually, which is a series kind of made in the vein of another old school platformer, more of a collectathon. I'm blanking, Banjo-Kazooie.
Banjo-Kazooie.
So it's kind of, it was a bunch of people who love those series growing up. They are now adults making video games themselves. So they made a love letter to it, Ukulele. So we're going to be checking that out next week.
Yep.
And then, so the before we started, I told Jonathan there was a small announcement I wanted to tell him so he could inform his wife.
Okay.
I was able to get a hold of a Sega Genesis Mini a few days back.
Yes.
So Earthworm Jim is now a go. I have access to a copy of Earthworm Jim now. And so I didn't tell you, but I already put that on the schedule for the week after next. If that's okay with you, that'll be that, yeah?
Perfection.
Okay.
she'll be very excited.
I figured she would be. I joined just in time. That's the freaking best. I'm glad you like the news. Yeah, we'll be doing that in just a couple weeks. When this episode's actually scheduled, who knows? But November 25th is when it will actually be. The episode will be going live. So that should be a lot of fun. Last thing, as always, last couple weeks we've been asking everybody if you have any ideas at all for anything for Christmas. Let us know, because right now all we have is Wisdom Tree. Is that what they're called?
The Wisdom Tree Bible games, yeah.
Right, yeah, which are absolutely garbage, and
they are.
I mean, spoiler alert, sorry. But yeah, so that's pretty much the only ideas we have right now. So if anybody knows anything better,
please
come on, please.
Nostalgia for me though, because I don't know if I ever told you, but for some reason I did not have an NES as a kid. I had a Super Nintendo. Yeah. But I don't know where my mom found it. It may have been from Wisdom Tree themselves, but she also went to a series of book and Bible stores. Do you remember those? Book and Bible stores? Yeah, that's
probably where, to be honest.
Okay, but there was a plug-and-play console. She found this giant controller that looked like an N64 controller. And on it were all of the Wisdom Tree NES games.
Oh my god.
I don't know where she found that, but she had it. I had it, and I didn't even know what they were until way later in life. Like, I knew them as a kid, and it got broken somehow, so I couldn't play it anymore, a long time ago. But when I finally grew up and I started watching the Angry Video Game Nerd, I was like, oh, no way. I didn't know. I thought it was something totally rare and fringe, and I barely even knew if it even happened. But it was a real thing. Wisdom Tree Bible games. They're all pretty much clones of other actual games like Wolfenstein and Legend of Zelda and a few other things.
Yeah, I've seen a little bit. I don't know a whole lot about them, but I've been on YouTube long enough to know they're a thing and they're terrible. Right. So if nobody gives us better suggestions for Christmas, that's what we're going to subject everybody to, as well as ourselves. So
save us.
Yeah, we'll see what happens about that. I guess that's pretty much it for this week, though. Right. So, John, where can everybody find you at, bud?
You can find me on Twitch and on YouTube, The Dorseman. Put a space in between the and The Dorseman. That is a problem that I didn't realize I would have, but a couple of people have tried to find me recently and didn't know that there was a space. There is a space.
Okay.
2 words, The Dorseman. I'm on YouTube and on Twitch. You can find me on Instagram and on Twitter, at John Dorsey1 on Twitter. And I'm pretty sure it's just John Dorsey on Instagram. I say pretty sure every week. I keep forgetting to check. But anyway, Christian, where can we find you?
Yeah, I'm also on YouTube and Twitch. It's Stream All the Steam on there. On Twitch, we live stream whenever we record these episodes. Lately, that's been pretty much the only thing I've been live streaming, but I occasionally do other things as well. And YouTube is just kind of there for VODs whenever I do other random things, etc. You can also find me on Twitter, of course. I am Stream the Steam on Twitter, at Stream the Steam, if I'm not mistaken, because Twitter has limits on how long your name can be. So that's kind of what I got stuck with. And then, of course, there's the Discord channel as well. And as always, everything will be linked below if you are watching on YouTube, or somewhere in the description if you're watching on a podcast provider.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in. You didn't have to listen to us, but you did, and we appreciate it.
We really do. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. Bye-bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Love this podcast? Support this show through the Acast supporter feature. It's up to you how much you give, and there's no regular commitment. Just click the link in the show description to support now.